kind of add your voice to the conversation in the comments section.
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello and welcome to Headliners, the show that has comedians read the papers so you don't have to. My name's Dominic Frisby, I'm your host, and as you can imagine, Ukraine and Russia dominate tonight's stories, but we've also got stories on Britain's ongoing charity scandal, Prince William and psychedelic drugs at Harvard University. How about that? With me analysing the stories are comedians Andrew Doyle and Sajila Kershi. But before we let them speak, we go to Miranda Shunker for the news.
Thank you. The top stories from the GB newsroom. The Prime Minister has told his cabinet it's a dark day in our history after Russia invaded Ukraine. Boris Johnson says the UK must work with its allies to ensure President Putin fails in his bid to undermine Ukrainian sovereignty. The port city of Mariupol suffered heavy fire and the Chernobyl nuclear plant was captured, allowing Russian forces to advance closer to the capital, Kiev, tonight. Ukraine says 57 people have been killed and 169 wounded. Boris Johnson told MPs earlier the UK is imposing the most severe package of economic sanctions against Russia.
We will continue on a remorseless mission to squeeze Russia from the global economy piece by piece, day by day and week by week. And we will, of course, use Britain's position in every international forum to condemn the onslaught against Ukraine, and we will counter the Kremlin's blizzard of lies and disinformation by telling the truth about Putin's war of choice and his war of aggression.
Well, the US is also ramping up sanctions against Russia, as well as taking action against 24 Belarusian individuals and entities for supporting Moscow's invasion. President Biden says Kremlin claims it reacted after being threatened by Ukraine and NATO are completely unfounded.
Putin is the aggressor. Putin chose this war, and now he and his country will bear the consequences. Today, I'm authorizing additional strong sanctions and new limitations on what can be exported to Russia. This is going to impose severe cost on the Russian economy, both immediately and over time.
Well, £77 billion was wiped off the FTSE 100 as global markets tumbled following the incursion. UK stocks fell 2% in what's been the worst day for the markets in nearly 2 years. Companies with close links to Russia were hardest hit. And the Home Secretary has announced all Ukrainians in the UK will have their visas temporarily extended or the status changed in the wake of Russia's invasion.
Putin, stop the war! Stop! Putin, stop the war! Stop! Putin, stop the war!
Well, earlier, hundreds of people staged a demonstration outside Downing Street, calling for more drastic action from Britain and other international allies to help Ukraine. Dozens of protesters also gathered outside the Russian embassy. 3 former Minneapolis police officers have been convicted of violating George Floyd's civil rights as he lay dying in 2020. The 46-year-old's murder by police officer Derek Chauvin sparked racial injustice protests around the globe. The trio were all charged with failing to provide medical aid when Chauvin held his knee into Mr. Floyd's neck for 9.5 minutes. And a juror from the Ghislaine Maxwell trial is to be questioned under oath by a US judge. It's believed he answered no on a pre-trial questionnaire when asked if he'd ever been the victim of sexual assault. After the trial, he told journalists he'd used his own experience of abuse to help convince the other jurors to convict Maxwell. The 60-year-old socialite was jailed for trafficking girls for sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. The judge has rejected Maxwell's lawyer's bid to seek a new trial. Well, on TV, online and DAB plus radio, this is GB News. Now it's back to headliners.
Thank you, Miranda. Hello and welcome to Headliners, the show that looks at the most important, the most interesting, the most irritating, or the most amusing stories from tomorrow's papers. My name's Dominic Frisby, and with me tonight, attempting to make jokes at the onset of World War III, we may have a man who pulls a face if I ever do a joke about him, so I won't. It's Andrew Doyle. And we have a lady who smiles at whatever onions life throws at her, Sajila Kershi. How are you both?
Oh, good, yeah.
Given the circumstances.
Yeah, it's a very strange day, isn't it?
It is a strange day. What were you doing? I suppose World War III hasn't officially been declared, but what were you doing when war happened? Can you remember what you were doing? You know, people always ask what were you doing when Kennedy was shot.
Oh, well, I mean, I was on Twitter. And I think that's going to be the general answer for any major monumental landmark from now on. Do you remember what you were doing when that happened? I was on Twitter, because everyone's always on Twitter. Well, I am.
I was on Twitter, but I had just put dye on my roots to come on tonight because I made an effort for the viewers. Did you? Yeah, well. So I do remember, I will always remember that I did have dye in my hair and I was looking at Twitter. Insights,
Sajila, for the audience. Right, we start off as ever with tomorrow's front pages. No prizes for guessing what they all lead with. And we start with the Daily Mail, which has Putin to seize capital in days. And there's a picture of teacher Elena Kurilo, who is a 53-year-old teacher who was injured when the Russian forces bombed earlier today. We have The Telegraph, which has new Cold War as Putin strikes. Moving on to The Guardian, we have Putin invades, and there's a picture of that same injured schoolteacher. Moving on to The Eye, we have Ukraine's agony, families flee as war comes to Europe, and finally a slightly curtailed and abridged run-through of the headliners, but we have the Daily Star, which has pretty much gone for it. There's a picture of Vladimir Putin with a Hitler hairdo and a Hitler moustache, and it says, "Who do you think you are kidding, Mr. Putin?" And I suppose if the Daily Star is making comparisons to Hitler, that's a pretty strong statement, even by Daily Star standards. And those are today's headlines. And Andrew, I suppose we'll start with you. And I suppose the million-dollar question is, before we turn to specific stories, there are so many, the question I'm asking myself is, how long does this go on for? How serious is Putin? And at every stage I've thought, he won't do it.
But this is it. I mean, I've been watching pundits talk about this endlessly for the past month or so, and everyone's been getting it wrong in some way or another. I think we have to be humble enough to accept that we don't know what's going to happen next. What I think is an interesting question at the moment is, why has he chosen now to do this? I mean, it's now looking very much like this is something he'd intended to do for a long time, because we've known that troops have been massing on the border there for over a year now, since last March, I think it was. And that's why a lot of people felt that all of this talk of him invading Ukraine felt alarmist because, of course, he had 100,000 troops on the border, last year around the same time. So that's why a lot of people thought it was just saber rattling, which was the phrase that a lot of people were using. So why has he chosen now to do it? And there's a lot of talk in the press about how, I suppose, the weakness of Biden's administration might have emboldened this. If you think about the catastrophe of Afghanistan, when America withdrew there and left all their stuff behind for the Taliban, that kind of thing then emboldens other states, particularly for someone like Putin, for whom it's all about strength, isn't it? It's all about bravado.
Yeah, I mean, if he were to have withdrawn his troops after they'd been there for a year, Sajeela, would that perhaps be conceived as him admitting defeat, which is something Putin would never admit?
No. And I think, the comparisons next to Hitler, I don't think they're too far off. I think he's actually been planning this a lot longer than a year ago. I think this has been in the making for years. We've had dirty money laundering happening by the oligarchs, which I only found out what they were recently, by the way. Oligarchs coming in, so we have almost colluded with this for many years. And this is, I keep saying it, I think this is his final thing. He doesn't care if this goes wrong or bad, but he's going to kind of die by making this big statement.
Do either of you have sidelines in psychology?
Yes.
Is Putin a psychopath?
I think he is a narcissist, and I think he's got a huge ego, which has been dented along the way. And I saw earlier on today that they've said that Iraq war was a breach of international law, whereas Russia wants to destroy international law. So that's a big, big fight to be having.
Well, I mean, I'm not one for psychology, or certainly not psychoanalyzing people I've never met before. I don't know what's going through his head, but what I would say is I look at some of the rhetoric that he's coming out with. I mean, a lot of the talk now is about empire. It's about invoking the old imperial Russia and this kind of thing. And that does make me nervous because, I mean, look, we look at him and we see
of his legacy. Maybe?
Well, this is the point. This is the point that Sajeela's making, is that we see these images of him, riding horses without a shirt on and wrestling with bears or whatever it is he does, and you think obviously this is someone. It's very tempting to say we get what this person is. We know what this sort of person is like, but we don't really know. We don't know what's going through his head, and we don't know why he's doing it. But we can look at the words that he's coming out with and say, well, if he's talking about empire, he's talking about all this old stuff, then there are fears of further expansion, aren't there? But on the other hand, we also have to take the Russian government at their word when they say they're concerned about NATO expansion. That's obviously going to be part of this as well. So I suppose I'm not being very helpful here. I don't know what he's thinking. I just don't know what he's thinking.
I think he's planning to be in it for the long run. Apparently somebody's been saying that it was 300 million he's got put aside.
It's a big investment. Right, let's turn to some specific stories, and we start off with The Independent. It reports that in the United States, lawmakers from across party lines have signed a letter asking President Biden to seek Congress approval to send troops to the Ukraine. Now, that would be a show of international solidarity, or a very serious mistake. I mean, an actual confrontation between Russian and American troops is perhaps not something you want.
I don't think we want that. Well, 43 US lawmakers from both sides of the aisle have taken it upon themselves to write a letter to President Biden asking him to seek congressional approval before sending troops to Ukraine, because he always said it was off the table, so he was never going to put them in. But now they're saying that if you are going to send troops in, that's going to cost like American lives, men and women's lives. And so to consult with the Congress and also to see what the public wants, because we're all really, really kind of know, I think both UK and the US are well aware of what a conflict, that's going to do. Now, you said, it was interesting, you said, I don't know why he's doing it now. I think it's because the world is quite weakened from the post-pandemic, financially, just emotionally, everything. And so we are not as strong as we were as people. Even the negotiations haven't been strong.
The West is so weak.
Yeah.
We're so vulnerable financially. Yeah. We've been printing money. We're vulnerable to inflation. We're already seeing inflation. We've got zero interest rates. And it's like the West is praying that it can wage war by sanctions, and that will be enough.
Yeah, but the West doesn't like waging war and doesn't want to wage war. I mean, but you say that we're economically weak, but Russia certainly is economically weak, and this is what I find quite startling about this whole thing. I mean, it goes into Crimea in 2014. The reason he doesn't go further is because, of course, he didn't have the pipeline under the Baltic Sea at that point, right? So he relied on Ukraine for the pipelines because, as we know, gas and oil are the major exports of Russia. And then the year after 2015 starts building the Nord Stream pipeline, and now he has this opportunity again. So he doesn't want to lose that pipeline under the Baltic.
I will say this before we go into our next story. The Russian stock market is something like 40% natural resources. Its economy is incredibly geared to natural resources.
Yes.
Metals, energy, grains. And as is Ukraine's, by the way. And one side of the fall of the Soviet Union you never read about in the 1980s is the fact that commodities went into a 20-year bear market. So the value of the Soviet economy at the time capitulated. And that's what forced the Soviet Union into bankruptcy as much as anything. But now commodities are high, so Russia is in a pretty strong place, whereas the West, not so much so economically, because it's so geared to tech stocks and services and all the rest of it.
I don't know whether he can afford it, though, and I don't know whether it would be popular. I mean, you know. OK, now let's move on to another story, and this is Labour MP Chris Bryant in the House of Commons today hitting the news for asking whether Roman Abramovich's assets should be seized. This is the Telegraph, Andrew. Yes, so this is the Labour MP Chris Bryant. So he's saying that we need to take action against Abramovich. Shouldn't be allowed to own Chelsea, which I believe is a football club. Is that right? I've done some research, you see, I know. He says he's seen this leaked document from government, which connects Abramovich directly to the Russian state and also suggests quite a few dodgy dealings, some corruption. Abramovich, I should emphasise, Abramovich, you see, has said that he denies all this. He says he doesn't have links. He says it's false and defamatory, and doesn't. I'm saying that because he's clearly quite litigious as well. Yeah, well, so I'm just getting that out there.
Abramovich's fortune was made by seizing assets during the fall of the Soviet Union.
Right, I see. I see.
Tell us your view on this.
Well, I did read that. That's how he made his fortune, and he's quite a young man to have as much as he does. This is how much money this man has. He is scarily rich. That one of his divorce settlements, 1 out of 3 of his divorce settlements, he paid his wife £300 million, and he's still paying installments. I know. And the kids every other weekend.
Should have married him.
I know. I should have done. Yes, I should have.
Let's
be
more strategic. You know?
Yeah, I know. It's too late now.
The interesting question that raises a moral question for me about seizing assets.
Right.
Because as soon as somebody else's private property, the state feels entitled to take it, then.
Yeah.
But they're doing it specifically. I think they said 5 different Russian oligarchs that they're going to freeze the asset, or targeting in particular, or was it 3? But they're targeting the Russian oligarchs in London, who, as we know, as you said, have had sort of free reign in London in terms of sinking lots of their money.
I mean, they've got to have very serious proof before they can start.
They do, and he does. You know, Abramovich, that's how you pronounce it. Yes, Abramovich does indeed deny. The thing is, I know nothing about football. Literally, any football question, I'm stuck.
5 of them. That makes it sound like the 5 families. You know, that's the Russian mafia, right?
Well, again,
allegedly.
We're not saying that at all. But
back when this show started in November, I remember saying that one thing that was going to keep cropping up over the next year was inflation, and here it is today again in The Guardian, Andrew.
Yeah, so this is about universal credit. So apparently, the Joseph Rowntree Foundation, this is a group that have looked into this, and they've analysed this. They said that 9 million low-income families will be, they say, £500 a year poorer after the changes in April. That's this is to do with inflation. So in other words, inflation is forecast to hit 7% by April, and the benefits would not be rising at the same rate. They'd be rising by, I think, 3.1%. And this means that couples who have children who are on low incomes are going to experience a real terms cut of £500 a year. So when you sort of take into account the inflation, and that's a hell of a lot, you know, and it's coming at a time when all sorts of people are, you know, we've got the cost of living crisis, we've got the energy hike, which is about to hit. £500 a year.
Oil hit $100 a barrel today.
Right.
And that manifests. Oil is felt.
And the Russian situation is going to make this even worse. I mean, the point is that people cannot afford to live like this. You know, when you read these figures, and a lot of people, they see those figures and think, well, that's not much, is it? But if you're on the poverty line, it's actually, it makes all the difference, whether you can survive or not. So this is hugely concerning.
I'll say inflation always hits the poor hardest.
Well, I was just going to say that it's always the poorest, the most marginalised, to get most forgotten. And I just think sometimes the governments, the people that make the decisions, are just out of touch with how bad things are. Food banks are being used not by, you know, benefit scroungers, as people call them, just they're being used by people like us.
Stop printing money. Right, the Telegraph is next, and Rishi Sunak, the Chancellor, who today gave a speech extolling at great length the importance of low taxes and free trade, and then ruled out tax cuts, is now being questioned by the police as to whether he was at the Downing Street parties. Who has... This is you.
So I did, so I was teasing Andrew, because the other day he said Rishi for Prime Minister.
I didn't say it quite like that. I said that I think he will be Prime Minister. I wasn't saying I want him to be
no, I mean, OK, like, to be fair to Rishi. So Rishi, so, you know, they've been having this investigation, and so the Chancellor's been issued with a police questionnaire for his alleged attendance at Boris Johnson's Downing Street party gathering. Now, I reckon there's some weird chemical at 10 Downing Street that they inhale because when they leave, they've forgotten, they get amnesia, and nobody really seems to remember what happened. What party? Where happened? And so snitches to Mr. Sunak, close to Mr. Sunak, said on Thursday that he'd been involved in the event held at the Cabinet at number 10, and reportedly also attended by Lulu Little, who's Mr. Johnson's interior designer. Now, there's no concrete evidence that these snitches have been telling tales on, so I'm going to suggest that maybe it's not true. Maybe he was just popped in to say hello to Lulu Little, and by the way, I think your decor is a bit rubbish. You know, we don't...
Are you saying snitches by accident?
No, I did it on deliberate.
Oh, I see. Well, we don't know, but you're right. He said, well, it was 2 years ago. How am I supposed to remember? And actually, there was an interesting answer when he was asked last month about whether he was the president of any of the parties. He said, and asked whether he was expected to receive a questionnaire from the Met Police. He said, no, well, I don't know. He said he doesn't know. He can't remember.
I have to say, if he was there for a sort of extended period of time, but beyond just sort of poking his head round the door, I find it very, you know, there's a big irony klaxon going on, because he was distancing himself mad from Boris and was sort of not giving his, you know, undivided support.
But you know what this will... I mean, perfect time for this news to break, though, I have to say. You know, when everyone's talking about Ukraine, this is the perfect time for because this could really scupper his leadership plans, couldn't it? And if it is just a race-off between him and Liz Truss... Well, she definitely wasn't there, right? She definitely didn't go to the party, and that could make a difference.
Could save her. Right, we've reached the end of part one. Make sure you join us for part two, when we'll be finding out how Scotland's 2022 census could prove to be one of the most inaccurate ever. That's in just a moment.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Friday Night Feast, 7 until 9 p.m. this coming Friday. It's the show that's got it all. It's the newest show on television. We take different news angles on the week's biggest news topics. Also, you, the viewer, and the listener, get to set me a totally mad challenge to do, like this one.
I heard Patrick Christie's up on my manor, so I'm out here looking for him, because I want to do him.
Oh, and at the end as well, we try to rehome a dog. What's not to love, everybody? 7 till 9 p.m. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's. Be there.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back to Headliners. I'm Dominic Frisby, and with me looking at the papers are Sajila Kershi and Andrew Doyle. And we turn straight away to the Telegraph, where Scots will be allowed to self-identify on the 2022 census. That means they can choose whether they are male or female. A victory for trans rights, or just silly, Sajila?
Well, I can kind of see both sides on this. So a campaigning and consultancy group called Fair Play for Women, they did actually win a similar case last year for in the English courts, leading to the census guidance being changed for the rest of the UK. Said that they were surprised and disappointed by this court case, which basically has said that they can register. Now, obviously, if you're thinking, like, OK, I can see why they're saying no, and as a woman and all the things that biology and stuff, I'm OK with that. But on the other side, if you do have on the census as people identifying, and there's going to be people who are going to be drunk that night, you know, census night's always a bit dodgy, who might spoil the census. But there's also going to be like a people who are going to say, look, finally, I can say that I am trans, I am a man or I'm a woman, and I can put that down, and then we get like an estimate of how many trans there actually are. So that's that side of the story. And then the other side is like, well, you know, the biology side of it.
Well, we won't get a good estimate of how many trans people there are, because you can simply put the opposite sex as your sex. So we won't know how many trans people there are, and what it'll do is it'll change the situation.
Oh, yes.
So that's the problem. So, I mean, look.
It's a really important piece of data, and it's being undermined.
The point of the census is to record facts, OK? I think a good compromise here would be to record biological sex and record gender identity as an option. So you could put on the census what your gender identity option, because then that would hopefully satisfy everyone, wouldn't it? I mean,
Andrew Doyle, fixing Scotland.
It's a really simple solution as well.
Right.
Listen, Scotland.
Makes total sense.
Listen to him.
On a similar theme, but an altogether different approach, we discover from the Mail that in Texas, the governor, Greg Abbott, has ordered an inquiry whether the parents of children who have had sex change procedures can be prosecuted for child abuse, Andrew.
Yeah, so the Texas Governor Greg Abbott, he said he's ordered his state's child welfare agency to investigate gender transitioning procedures among children, and he considers this to be a form of child abuse. This is, as you know, a very contentious issue. Lots of sort of high emotions relating to this. There has been a rapid increase in young people, children, infants, claiming to be born in the wrong body or having gender issues or issues relating to gender dysphoria. But of course...
Is that not part of growing up?
Right, exactly. So one of the problems is, and we've had it over here with the Tavistock Clinic in the UK, is that the approach from many paediatricians who specialise in gender has been what they call a gender affirming strategy. In other words, a child comes to you and says, I think I'm actually a girl, I think I'm actually a boy. The policy has been to affirm that, say, yes, you are. Now let's move on from there. And that's very, very dangerous as it happens. We don't do it in any other medical condition. If a child comes to you and says, I think I'm obese, they have a sort of a perspective of themselves that's completely wrong, and they're suffering from body dysmorphia. Yeah. We don't say, yes, you are obese, that's right, you are, so you should keep starving yourself. Mm-hmm. We say, no, we need to have a conversation about it, we need to talk about the reasons why you might feel this way, etc. We know as well that the vast majority of children who feel unstable within their gender, that typically is resolved through the process of puberty. In the vast majority of cases, there are some people who are gender dysphoric and will end up being gender dysphoric even after post-puberty, but the vast majority won't. And when you put them on puberty blockers and this kind of medication to prevent puberty, what you're doing is you're preventing the very thing that will resolve the problem. And I think also because puberty blockers so often lead to medication, irreversible surgery eventually, you know, this kind of thing. It is incredibly dangerous. And more we're getting young people, detransitioners they're called, people who did go through this, were told by people like Kira Bell, who were told by the Tavistock Clinic, yep, you just go with it, just change your body, have the surgery, etc. And she now says she was never questioned, it was never interrogated, it was just affirmed. And that's causing really, it's very, very dangerous principle.
Sajila, has Abbott got this right, do you think?
No, because I think in America, those children who... So I don't think punishing the parents after the event is really helpful.
No, I don't think he's planning to do that.
OK.
But he's saying you can be prosecuted.
Yeah, you can be prosecuted.
Yeah.
But I think legislate on age, we were talking about this after, we talk about this quite a lot, Andrew and I, and I think age, like 16, maybe then you start having those conversations, but I agree with all the things that you just said, Andrew. But I think it's also, in America, if you are transitioning or you'll get taken, it is a privilege. It's the poor aren't able to have this, and so it may be a little bit indulgent parents as well, which I'm probably going to get slated for saying that.
Isn't it interesting that it's become an almost right-left issue, and now so Republicans, right-wing people, but they might have different reasons for this, you know. So you get these weird alliances between feminists, socialists, you know, and sort of the Christian right. It's very weird.
It's bizarre.
It is such a weird time.
Yeah. The Guardian is next, Sajila, and Prince Harry has launched a libel claim against associated newspapers for a piece by the Mail on Sunday. OK, so Prince Harry launches a libel action against the Daily Mail. Mail on Sunday, sorry. Is there anyone that hasn't sued the Mail at all? Oh, you haven't.
I haven't.
We haven't.
We're here.
Not
if you want to, have a go. So basically, this one is around misinformation around his security, and the headline that really irked our Harry was revealed how Harry tried to keep his legal fight over bodyguards a secret. So now, obviously, we know that he's also bringing privacy claims against the news group, newspapers, which publish the Sun, Mirror, and etc., over alleged hacking and unlawful information gathering. And he's also involved in litigation against the Home Office over his security arrangements when he comes to the UK. So he's been a busy boy, and obviously getting a little bit knocked, because it's all started with him not being able to pay. He obviously wanted to pay for his own security, and obviously that's not happened. And
the Home Office said they wouldn't let him, right?
They wouldn't. And he has got genuine concerns about, like, something could happen to him because he was chased down by...
Why is he not allowed to pay for his own security?
We don't know why he's not allowed to pay for it, because I guess it's like if we just said, look, you know, High Court...
We've said we're not going to pay for it.
Oh, we said, yeah, the ordinary person saying they don't want to pay for it, but he's been told that he can't pay for his own security, which I think there's nothing wrong with that. Why can't he pay for his own security? But I think he does deserve protection, him and Meghan, because they're still part of the establishment, even if they're not.
Do we know why, Andrew, that particular phrase got under his skin so much?
No, we don't. I mean, we've no idea. What we do know is that him and Meghan have this kind of litigious quality about them, shall we say. It's a real change, though, because traditionally the royal family have never sued. And this is why Spitting Image, for instance, and satirical shows were particularly harsh about the royal family, because they knew that they just never did. They had that kind of stoical, stiff upper lip thing. They would just take everything. But these guys, I suppose now they've left, they can sue everyone.
Do you think it's up because they're a couple of royal Karens? Is that what it is?
I think it's probably, you know, North American culture, much more litigious than European. And, you know, the Meghan factor.
Don't be dissing Meghan.
A story, I will diss her a lot.
I like her a lot.
You're wrong.
We'll have his outside, Dominic.
A story from the Mail next, and not the first of its kind. Sexual abuse in the army, Andrew.
Yeah, I mean, this is just a really depressing story. So this is related to a British Army corporal who has been imprisoned for sexually assaulting another soldier, junior soldier to him, and this happened. They were both very, very drunk. It happened in the woods. I don't want to sort of go into the sort of specific details of what happened. He claims he can't remember anything that happened. He said he's horrified and shocked, not least obviously because it's sexual assault, but also that he's heterosexual. So this kind of thing makes no sense to him. And look, it's just one of those.
It will make him probably a figure of fun in the army amongst his fellow.
Well, no, I mean it's worse than that. He's on the sex offenders register for 5 years. He's going to serve 14 months.
Oh, I meant the victim.
Oh, and the victim as well. Yeah. Sure. I mean, of course, you know. But this guy is going into the Military Corrective Training Centre in Colchester for 14. It's just a grim story. What is there to say? He's committed a horrible crime and is now being punished for it.
Yeah. The Times is next, and we no longer have to wear masks on public transport, Sajila. Hallelujah.
So Sadiq Khan scraps the requirement to wear masks in London's public transport. Sadiq Khan.
Is that the correct pronunciation?
I don't know, because me and him we're buddies who come to my show, thinks I'm really funny. So
Sadiq.
Sadiq Khan. Yeah, Sadiq Khan.
Very erudite.
So I think it's just, you know, like the Underground and all the tubes, London Transport, there was a presence of masks, and now that, you know, it's completely removed. The problem here is that, because I think Sajid Javid also added in that the Health Secretary, that it's an important day, we move on from the rules set by the government to more personal responsibility, which I find problematic because it depends. Like, if not everyone has got personal responsibility, not everyone, you know, there are selfish, you know, self-serving people who won't care about this, and throughout have not cared, actually. And it's not just like, oh, it's my freedom and stuff and all that. And I'm not saying present company. I'm just saying.
Are you advocating in my presence state mandates over a voluntary?
I don't want mandates. I don't agree with mandates. I believe in freedom. I freedom of choice. But I'm saying that this whole personal responsibility, it's like, I'd like to see evidence of that personal responsibility. So I'd like to see people being more thoughtful and considerate. But I don't think we've seen that in the last year, especially. It's been so divisive. It's been so angry. And I just think, wow, I never thought we'd have a day where people were arguing about vaxing, not vaxing, pro-mask, not masking, and we're in about Third World War about to happen. So. Yeah, I just had a problem with that personal responsibility aspect.
Andrew, are you still using public transport, or do you have?
Yeah, I am, and I think this is a chauffeur. Give me a break. And this is. You must think I'm really rich, and I go, no. This is a, you know, but it's good news in a way, because it's a sign that we are learning to live with the virus, and this is something we've known for a while now. We're going to have to live with this thing, and also this is a milder strain of the virus now, to a degree where these kind of protections aren't needed. The government's dropped them, but also I think with Khan is because initially he held on to the mask rule, but I was travelling on the tube a lot, and there was hardly anyone wearing it.
It was 50-50 in the evenings and maybe 70-30 in Russia.
Because he was talking about fining people, but actually, I think if push came to shove, he wouldn't be able to do that legally, because it was no longer against the law, and you can't do that. You can't say you have to dress in a certain way for the tube.
I think about 1,200 or 1,400 people were actually got on-the-spot fines. They probably just accepted.
They probably just accepted it. But I think, you know, we are going to have to live with it, and I think this is quite a good thing.
All hail the voluntarist approach, Sajila. Right, the organisers of the Eurovision Song Contest have declared that despite invading the Ukraine, Russia can still compete. Vladimir Putin, no doubt, breathing a huge sigh of relief.
Yeah, so this is... The Eurovision Song Contest organisers have said, you know, it's a non-political event. That's hilarious for a start, because it's all politics. I actually think, you know, if you think about the way the Eurovision Song Contest works, you know how like Greece and Cyprus always give each other 12 points? That's just a deal they've had for sort of many decades, and they keep doing that. You remember when the UK got nil points in 2003, and that was because of the Iraq War. So it's always, I think actually Eurovision is a really good way for people to settle their international disputes through the medium of kitsch disco. I think we should do it here rather than invading each other and all that nonsense. Just write a better song, Putin.
Well, I entered one of my songs, "I'm Going to Marry Gary," for the Eurovision a couple of years ago.
Did you?
It wasn't selected. Yeah, it wasn't.
Oh, so this is quite a bitter sore point for you.
Enter it again, I say.
I'd have to write another one. But Bill, what's his name? What's his name with the beard? Bill
Oddie?
No, the very good musical comedian. No, I can't remember his name.
Wyman?
No, the musical comedian who's like on...
Bill Bailey.
Bill Bailey, yeah. He's now talking about entering a song, and I think...
I thought for a minute he said Bill Bailey. Actually, Bill Bailey, I could see that.
Yeah. You know, I think with Eurovision we need more of that. We need more sort of novelty numbers, because it's all so highly sentimentalised, or that sort of Europop, you know, trash. I think let's get something a bit more...
I guarantee you, I hereby promise the nation now, I'm going to marry Gary would win?
We'd vote for it.
Yeah, it sounds very progressive.
5 points.
It is.
5 points for Gary, marry Gary.
Any thoughts on this, Sajid, or?
No, I just think, what would the song come from Russia this year? Would it be Bang Bang, Putin shot them down, bang bang?
Yeah.
He let me down.
Ukraine, it is mine. We have reached the end of part 2, time for the weather and then some ads. Make sure you watch the ads, buy their products and help fund us. And then join us for part 3 when we'll find out about the Russian soldiers who have taken to Tinder to try and meet Ukrainian girls. Bizarre, but apparently true. We'll see you in a moment.
Hello again, I'm Aidan McGivern. Any wintry showers and strong winds tend to ease gradually overnight, leaving icy patches in their wake, but a drier and sunnier day is expected on Friday. There'll be some clear spells in the south and the east through the night, but during the evening, further rain, sleet and hill snow showers could cause issues for northern England, Scotland and Northern Ireland. As they fade away during the hours of darkness, they leave behind some slippery surfaces, some icy patches to wake up to on Friday. 0 to 1 Celsius for Scotland and Northern England, 2 to 4 for Northern Ireland, England and Wales. But Friday itself sees high pressure towards the southwest of the UK build across the country, and as a result the wind finally eases and those showers also ease. There'll still be 1 or 2 around first thing, southwest Scotland, northwest England into the Midlands. Otherwise plenty of sunny spells, and that sunshine becomes widespread by the afternoon. Up and down the country it's looking dry for a few hours, and with those sunny spells with lighter winds it will feel pleasant. Temperatures reaching 10 Celsius in the south, 8 or 9 for Scotland, Northern Ireland and Northern England. But for Scotland, it turns cloudy by the end of the afternoon, as well as Northern Ireland. Outbreaks of rain move through here. Generally, it's light on and off rain, and that continues into the evening and overnight. As we start off the weekend, we'll see clear spells for England and Wales, cloudier conditions for Scotland and Northern Ireland. That's where the strongest breeze will be, and so frost-free, 6 or 7 degrees for Scotland and Northern Ireland first thing Saturday. It's looking closer to 0 for much of central and eastern England, where there will be a frost around, but plenty of bright skies. And actually for England and Wales, for parts of southern and eastern Scotland, a bright and dry day is expected. But for western Scotland, for Northern Ireland, it's windy. It's also cloudy, and there'll be some spots of rain with gales in exposed spots. Sunday sees rain move in from the west, but that dissipates by the afternoon.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome to part 3 of Headliners. This is the part where we look at some of the weirdest stories from the papers. I'm your host, Dominic Frisby. With me are Sir Gilett Kershey and Andrew Doyle, and a rather bonkers story next. Randy Russians is in the headline. What's it all about, Sir Gilett?
Oh, well...
You're our Randy Russian expert.
So Russian soldiers began bombarding Ukraine yesterday with Tinder messages looking for love. Now, Romeo and Juliet story, this is not. And nor is it finding love in a hopeless place. So Ukrainian women, just 20 miles from the tyrannical Vladimir Putin's vast invasion force, have been stunned by a salvo of admirers in uniform. And, you know, let's face it, we just discussed it. You know, women do like men in uniform. They can be quite sexy.
Have they sent pictures of themselves?
Yeah, exactly. Now, the thing is, they've got, like, photos of themselves on Tinder. So they've gone on Tinder to go and look for love. I don't know what initially you think, oh, that's quite sweet. They're going to, you know, they want like find love, but it's not. It's a bit sinister. They've obviously come prepared, like, oh, we got to Russia, we go fight, and we have, you know, sexy women and all that stuff. And they've said things like the women. They said, I couldn't believe my eyes when I popped up when they popped up trying to look tough and cool in these photos on Tinder. One muscular guy posed to try and look sexy in bed, posing with his pistol. Take that as a euphemism. I can't even say the word. Another was in full Russian combat gear. Another just showed off in tight, stripy vests. Where is this website?
So, Andrew, when you're invading a foreign country, do you update your Tinder profile?
Well, this is the point. If you're part of an invading army, there's an etiquette, isn't there? I mean, I think, you know, they're probably just young men who are doing what they normally do, going on Tinder, trying to find dates, and they haven't really thought it through that actually, but they are part of an invading force, and so therefore it carries connotations that aren't really just, you know, about flirtation. They're more a little bit threatening, maybe, or that's how it might come across, or maybe that's part of the appeal.
Oh, but do you know that they
they're around men. They've probably been surrounded by men for a year. They haven't been satisfied. They've been lonely, you know, as on things. So they want an outlet for it.
But I'm
justified.
But look, if you're receiving a Tinder message from someone when you know that this is part of a force that's going to invade your country, surely that's intimidating, isn't it?
It is intimidating, but it is also in the Sun, which you have to remember. So that is a factor in the story. We'll move on to our next story now, which is from the Times, and it will have no doubt aspirational homeowners weeping. A 75 square foot flat in Clapton, which is no bigger than a parking space, in other words, has just sold for 90 grand.
Yeah, so it had an original price, a guide price of 50 grand, 50,000, and it sold at auction for 90,000. It's let out for £800 a month, including bills. This is apparently believed to be London's smallest flat. I should hope so, if it's just the size of a car park. I see stuff like this and I think, London is basically out of control when it comes to house prices. You cannot live there unless you have a certain degree of wealth. Why don't people leave? Why don't more people not live in London? You can get a really beautiful big house for the price of a tiny little hovel in London. Just move up to Sheffield or Hull or, you know, or Halifax.
I've written for many years about how bonkers the London property market is, and I despise it, and I despise what it's done to people. But there is a justification for that price. You mentioned it lets for £800 a month. That's £9,600 a year. If it's sold for 90 grand, that means whoever buys it, assuming they let it out for 9 grand a year, it's yielding them 10%.
Yeah.
You know, interest rates are at 1%, whatever they are. Where else can you get 10%? It's a good investment.
And they sold it with the tenant, so it's not.
I think they sold it with the tenant. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's like just quids in, isn't it?
Yeah. You're buying a. You know, if somebody's prepared to pay 800 quid a month for a little bed sit in town, it pays for itself.
But it escalates so quickly, you know. And some people I know, I used to have a friend who she was offered to buy her flat in Maida Vale back in the 1960s, I think it was, and she didn't. She decided to rent. And so when she was an elderly woman, when I knew her, she was constantly regretting this because it was then worth, you know, an absolute fortune. You know?
I remember my parents. I grew up in Putney, was the first house my parents lived in. And they sold their house in Putney, which is a lovely detached house in Putney, and they sold it for 60 grand. That house would probably be worth more than 6 million quid or something now.
Yeah.
And it doesn't show you so much how much house prices have gone up. It shows you how much the value of money has gone down. And it's a terrible thing we've done to our kids. The Independent reports on the latest instalment of Britain's never-ending charity scandal. This one's for you, Sajid.
Oh, yes. Remember Captain Tom Day? Well, his...
Captain Tom.
Captain Tom.
Yeah, Captain Tom. The headline says they're talking about Captain Tom Day.
Oh, you can't see it. Yeah, Captain Tom. So, you know, I was a fan, and I was going to say I was not going to do this mistake, but I've made the mistake. So, a fundraising event billed Captain Tom Day, so a day for Captain Tom. It's been postponed in the wake of disclosures about the finances of the charity that was set up in the name of the veteran. And from what I can gather, so Dame Esther Childline Ranson had partnered up with this foundation, and she's basically said she's willing to cut ties with the charity if the watchdog findings were negative towards it. And from what I can gather, it's something to do with the fact that Miss Ingram Moore, who's his daughter, and his son-in-law, she asked to be a CEO with a six-figure salary, equating to about a tenth of its first-year income. So something around that. I'm not suggesting that anything, because nothing's happened yet. They're just investigating. But it's a bit sad that that's his legacy, and that's kind of been tainted.
It is. It's a common feature of Britain's charities. It's something like 50% of the money that you give to the charity ends up going on admin and particularly wages. You look at the extraordinary amount of money that charity CEOs earn. I think David Miliband is on an extraordinary amount of money, and you can sort of earn a fortune and profess your virtue at the same time.
I mean, it's just difficult, isn't it? Because this particular story, and the story of Captain Tom, has had such emotional resonance for people in the country, and then there've been subsequent scandals. You know, first there was the revelation of how much they were spending on admin and management costs, and then there's the investigation into Miss Ingram Moore, who was offered, as you say, this six-figure salary to run it, and she's now said no, I'm not going to do that. And now there's this, you know,
at the same time, you can't be expected to work for nothing.
For free, no.
No, that's true.
Maybe she gets that money doing what she did elsewhere, and she wanted to continue her dad's legacy, and she just wanted to command the salary. But
when more money is going on admin and management than is going to actual charities, which is why Captain Tom did what he did. You know what I mean? It's just a bit of a...
I think it's just I mean, you're a maths guy, right? So I just think a 70% towards charity work and 30% towards the cost of running that charity is probably a fair...
Maybe. There's a good book called The Great Charity Scandal, all about it. 2015 it was published. Anyway, next up we have The Guardian. And they're arguing about guns in Tennessee, Andrew.
What a surprise. Yeah, so gun safety advocates very, very concerned because there's new legislation in Tennessee, which is effectively going to designate some gun owners as police, or give them the status of police, and allow for civilians, therefore, to be carrying concealed firearms, the kind of firearms which would usually... you'd reserve for police and people who are trained, because a lot of these people will obviously not have that kind of training. So to give them that kind of status is bizarre to me. I mean, I've been back and forth with the gun law argument, but I keep coming back to this. Whenever I read a story in America about someone getting angry over a hamburger or something stupid and pulling out a gun and shooting someone, and you just kind of think that's why we have gun laws, because human beings are passionate, temperamental creatures, and if you've got a lethal weapon right next to you in the heat of the moment, who knows what can happen. I don't think it's a good idea, and particularly this idea of having effectively legalised vigilantism, I suppose, is what the concern is here. Sometimes you could argue. I mean, I remember when that guy attempted a mass shooting in that church in Texas, and he was down within 60 seconds because everyone's armed in Texas.
Yeah,
and you think, well, okay.
I'm going to a cafe in Texas with my kids, and a bloke just walks in with the holsters like in a cowboy film. So, the whole cafe goes quiet, but at the same time, everyone behaves themselves.
Yeah. Well, a separate bill, they say, would allow 18-year-olds in Tennessee to apply for concealed carry licenses. How can that be possible? Like, I wouldn't trust an 18-year-old to practice safe sex, let alone be let loose to trust him with a gun. So I think this gun thing's going to come with every show we do, unfortunately. Crime.
I'm not going to air my unacceptable views on the subject. Moving on to our next story. A kid in India has taken cheating in exams to a whole new level. This is from The Guardian, Sajila.
Oh, wow. OK, so let me just explain. As a child, as an Asian woman, as an Asian child, high-achieving parents, they want you to do the best, and you have to. You get an A, so come in with an A. No, you've got to get an A+. Now, in India, it's very competitive, and cheating has become rife now because competition is so fierce. So a medical student had a Bluetooth device implanted to cheat in his exam.
I mean, he actually had a surgeon fit
I know. He went to an ENT surgeon. Jesus, an ENT surgeon to have this put in there. So obviously, this is like a middle-class, well-to-do, because not everybody would be able to afford this. And so I'm thinking the parents must have had something. He kept failing this exam. Surely, just put some effort into actually doing the work and studying, then go through surgery, painful surgery.
But you've got to admire the commitment, right?
The commitment is huge.
But I would say, this is for a medical course. This was for a medical college. Why, being a doctor isn't something you can blag, because if you get it wrong, people die, right? So why would you want to pass an exam if you weren't knowledgeable enough, if you want to go into this profession? I don't get it.
I don't know, pressure from the parents, but I've got so many friends like that, and you're like, if you put as much effort into something legit as you put into scams, imagine the things you could achieve. Anyway, psychedelic drugs are back on the academic menu at Harvard. This is from the Mail, Andrew.
Yeah, so apparently Harvard University is reviving study into psychedelic drugs. And this is the hook of the story, really, is that 60 years ago they stopped doing that. The former professor, Timothy Leary, was banished because he was investigating into psychedelic drugs. And now they're sort of bringing it back. And the reason they're bringing it back is they say that there's increased evidence that they have beneficial effects in certain cases specifically such as post-traumatic stress disorder, anxiety, depression, addiction, that kind of thing. So that's what they're doing. And they're bringing back psychedelics. They're suggesting there's
I imagine they can help, although you're in very dodgy ground. What's your view, Sajeela?
I think it's really irresponsible because they're saying actually that no harm can be done if you take them. So if someone's reading this and they're a bit depressed, I think, well, I'll take some, and of course you can have a nice little trip. It's very irresponsible, I think, to write that.
I know all sorts of people. This is from my own childhood, so when I was a student 30 years ago, who were messed up quite badly by psychedelics. But
well, I've heard people have flashbacks to this kind of stuff.
People, Jesus complex, Messiah complex, all weird stuff. So you're on dodgy ground, but I sort of was assuming that the drugs had moved on and were more controlled and so on. Finally, our last story, we have the Daily Star. And what did Prince William know?
Oh.
This is all James Bond.
Well, dun, dun, dun. This is actually a bit of a non-story story. So Prince William, so we had Prince Harry. Now Prince William made a secret visit to MI6 hours before Russia launched attack in Ukraine. What could he possibly have wanted there? Well, it turns out he's actually just interested in the MIs, because he went to this is MI6, MI5. Back in 2019, William spent 3 weeks working with MI5, the Secret Intelligence Service, and to learn more about UK security. Now, I think he just was coincidental, but I love that they say Prince William made a secret visit. It's not so secret because we all know now.
What is the insinuation here? That he was...
I don't know.
I know that somehow he's got some inside knowledge.
Mole, or he had inside knowledge.
I mean, that would be deep cover, wouldn't it?
Really deep cover. Yeah.
I mean, it just seems daft to me. He's just interested in spying.
I think it's a story in the Daily Star. And they had a couple of pages to fill, and Prince William gets you clicks, and that's what I think is going on.
And then we've made it worse by talking about it and giving them the publicity.
Only sensationalised the nothing.
Yeah.
Because I was trying to find some secret thing in there. There's nothing.
There is nothing. It's, ladies and gentlemen, we end on nothing. Headliners bringing you the stories that have no content whatsoever. That is all we have time for. Thank you very much to my guests, Sajeela Kershi, and to Andrew Doyle. And thank you to you at home for watching. Headliners is back at 11 o'clock tomorrow night with the very tall Mark Dolan in the hot seat. I'll be back next week. Until then, from all of us here, cheerio. See you soon.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.